instead of 150% focused on more, how about 80% focused on more and 20 focused on profitability? And in many cases, the quickest shortcut to profitability is dumping the worst 20% of what you're doing.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast, brought to you by SME Strategy. My name is Anthony Taylor. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to be joined together for an episode where today we have Ben Hansen, the Profit Doctor, who's going to talk about how to improve profits. And I think that's such a critical thing. You know, we talk a lot about strategic planning. We talk a lot about leadership. But as we move into the back end of 2025, really wanted to focus more things to support organizations like you in being prosperous over time, making more money, being more successful, and adapting to changes. Ben Hansen is the Inc. 5000 4 or 5 times in a row. Ben, you'll have to correct me on that one. And just really excited to share, different perspectives, different tools that you can put in your business to help you make more money now before selling or exiting, having to do that reactively. So, Ben, thanks for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you. Welcome to the Strategy and Leadership Podcast.
Anthony, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation and meeting you and, hopefully trying to put some good tips in the hands of your audience to help them improve the profitability of their business and really just up-level what they're doing at work.
Excellent. So, in addition to being the Profit Doctor, you are a president of a Mactis Group, a business that has been going on for almost 20 years now. You've been a member of EO for 14 years, YPO. You've done tons of great stuff. Like, you've got an awesome CV, and you see the plaques behind you. Tell us about, a little bit who you are as a person, what drives you, what excites you, how do you view life and business, and we'll get into some questions.
Wow, that's quite an intro. So I've got the whole, 50 some years to talk about. But, most of my background has been in technology, sales and marketing, Dell, Microsoft, some startups. And then I left Microsoft to start a marketing and marketing analytics consulting company that basically sold what I used to buy to the people I used to work with. And that turned out to be a pretty good formula. We grew that company, Mactis Group, to 100 employees and about $13 million in revenue in about 8 or 9 years. Won some of those Inc. 5000, fastest growing company awards. Probably would have won more if I'd have thought about it earlier, but somebody's like, hey, you should apply for these things. Anyway, based on all that, I learned a lot about growth, and I did a number of really good things around profitability and a number of really dumbass things about profitability. And as I kind of wound down my time at Mactis Group and started thinking about my next chapter, I really realized that I've always been wired to focus on sort of keep the end in mind. And for me in business, the end was always profitability. And when I look back at my career, a laser focus around profitability and margins and things like that had always been sort of near and dear to my heart, or maybe my superpower, if you will. So I decided to start a consulting company that helps business owners directly focus and improve profitability in the shortest possible way. And what I found is that a lot of business owners don't know that there are, in fact, shortcuts, hacks, secrets to improving profitability. Maybe we can cover a few in this podcast.
Excellent. I love that. And what I think is cool is, you've done it, you've seen it, you've lived it. And, it's not just for CFOs. And I believe HR is a profit driver. But obviously, business owners who see the whole thing, who are trying to grow. And when we do strategic planning, by the way, everybody, SME Strategy facilitates strategic planning. If you're doing a strategic planning session, reach out to us. When we talk about where does the company want to be, we say, hey, yes, okay, we want to get to that top line number. Great. Exciting. But what about the profitability within there? We need to have that within the vision because, grow. But if you have profititis, then, you're suffering an affliction that hurts all areas of the business. So, Ben, why don't we talk about profitability? When we talk about some of the misconceptions that business owners have, what are the things that maybe hold them back as it relates to maximizing their full profit? And then maybe we'll get into some practical stuff after.
Boy, you sure touched on some of my favorite hot buttons. You said profititis, and you said, what are some of the key myths around profitability? And then you said, grow, grow, grow. I want to put them in the Cuisinart and come up with something good to help people with. Some of the myths that I see around profitability start with grow, 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 more, more, more. And I see so many business owners, department heads, etc., where 150% of their focus is on more growth, more top line, operations to support that, grow, grow, grow. And often the ugly stepchild is profit, profit, profit. And so what I invite my clients, as well as anybody I'm talking to try to help, is to balance that out a little bit. So maybe instead of 150% focused on more, how about 80% focused on more and 20 focused on profitability. And in many cases, the quickest shortcut to profitability is dumping the worst 20% of what you're doing, which is often ballast, holding the hot air balloon, if you will, of your enterprise down. And we call this whole thing profititis, which is when revenue is growing or flat and strong, but profitability is flat to declining. And in fact, just a story out of my own history, when we were growing so fast and getting those Inc. 5000 awards, we were growing top line 40% a year, but our bottom line was flat on an absolute basis. And while in some ways I anticipated this, I thought that I could grow my way into being a larger provider of services to my key clients, and that somehow I would monetize that on the back end or protect my position or whatever. What I realized later and didn't realize up front, is while growing top line and keeping bottom line flat, man, it really burnt me out. That was the bottom line. And why I got so burnt out is there was more to do with more top line, but also there were often so many problems and things not going well because we hadn't cut or exited or fixed the broken stuff because we were so focused on the top line. And as a result, it sort of stopped being fun to come to work because there was so much broken stuff. And so I just invite my clients to kind of balance those perspectives between top line growth and profitability for so many reasons. And I'll hand it back to you to see where you want to take that.
No, I think that's great. And I mean, especially in 2025, I'll do this one right here so we could be boom. So in 2025, having to adapt as a business owner, like those changes become even harder if you're not making money in the process. And the question I had was around that, like fueling growth. There's that show Silicon Valley, I think it is, where he's like, oh yeah, we're trying to figure out our revenue model. And then he's like, no. Revenue is the instant killer, because if you have revenue, it's never going to be enough. That way you could say you're pre-revenue. And it's like, okay, well, what is the purpose? Is the purpose to build a big company, or is the purpose to make money? So how can business owners maybe reframe that idea of growing and then profits later with, profits now? And I know you said 80-20, but you want to grow. What are some things that they can start doing practically to, support that journey of maybe better longevity, less burnout, et cetera?
Yeah, well, you touched on a lot of areas to take that. But one I would just say is, when I think about the Silicon Valley darlings, if you will, right? So VC-backed, typically technology companies, they're trying to grow as quickly as possible to own some new market and then dominate that market. The playbook there is generally spend as much as possible, as quickly as possible, with no regard to profitability in order to capture market share. Let's pretend that playbook or that sport is hockey. And so we have a playbook for that game plan, and let's call it a hockey playbook in deference to you coming from Canada. Well, let's pretend that hockey only makes up 1% of the world's kind of businesses. Here in the United States and Canada, Europe, the amount of companies that are Silicon Valley tech startups is a very, very tiny fraction of the total equation. But unfortunately, that game of hockey in this metaphor fills up 95% of the pages of, Inc. magazine and Fortune and the Wall Street Journal, etc. And so it takes up so much mind share of business owners and company leaders that maybe they forget, hey, that's great if you're playing hockey, but what do you do if you're playing baseball or basketball or football? You're probably going to want a different playbook.
Yeah.
And so if you're a $30 million a year plumbing company or a $150 million concrete manufacturer or whatever, or a builder or real estate or whatever, why would you follow the hockey playbook when it's a completely different sport? And what I'll tell you is there's no sense in doing that. And cash flowing and having profitability today, number one, it's so much more fun. It will put so much more money in your pocket. It can even put time back in your day. And it'll add so much more to enterprise value because we forget if you're playing hockey, they might be valuing you based on subscribers or revenue. But if you're playing football, basketball, or baseball, it's almost always a multiple of EBITDA. So you might as well be tuning up your EBITDA now rather than trying to put some lipstick on it in 5 years.
Well, I will say shout out to basketball, Trey Parker, Matt Stone. So that's great. And I think that's like, it's a really great analogy, especially, like I am in my 40s. I'm 40 now. When I started business, that was in like the Facebook hype days where everybody was trying to build a unicorn or a kajillion dollar business. And in that like land grab case, speed is the winner. Totally makes sense, but I never thought about it as like, yes, does that really apply to like a blue collar business? We as a company have so few tech businesses as clients. Often I say because they think they know better, but I think that potentially it's almost different is that the rules, it's a different set of rules. When we talked earlier today about, some of the things that you do within Profit Doctor without giving away the secret sauce, because it looks like a great program, looking at, hey, part of it is similar, akin to like a PE playbook. A lot of the work that we've done through integrations with teams are organizations buying old, let's call it blue collar businesses, letting people exit, looking for, dare I say, synergies. I want to have like a synergy button anytime anybody says it, like confetti comes out. But like looking and saying, hey, what are the fundamentals? You sell X, you buy it for Y, you make Z, and making sure that you can do that better at scale by doing it more effectively. So ultimately, it sounds like, how do our listeners build more effective businesses so that they can have EBITDA? Thoughts on that? And again, another big take it anywhere question.
Yeah. Well, the first thing to kind of tie my conversation to a little bit of what you do, and I think of like strategic planning or the highest level strategy, there's like a phase of your business that's growth, whether it's organic or strategic or whatever. But often what's then missing is a phase of your business where you consolidate those gains in part by being very strategic about what to get rid of, what to exit. And that is a core part of my playbook and a core part of the private equity playbook. If you're in a private equity business, let's say, and you're acquiring companies, it's highly likely that as you intake a new acquisition, you're evaluating, and let's call it 10 dimensions. Across 10 dimensions, where are they good and where are they bad? And likely what you're trying to do is to find the good stuff to pour more money into and scale, and to identify the lousy stuff and exit it from the business because it's, quote, a dog, right? If you were to look at a BCG growth model type 2x2 matrix, as long as we're talking business strategy. So when I think about what I do for many of my clients, and they're typically business owners, roughly 2 million in revenue to 50 million in revenue. So we'll call it large, small businesses or small, medium businesses, depending on your frame of reference. But we have our own 10 dimensions. And let's say staff, customers, market segments, products are examples of some of those dimensions. And we identify of those dimensions, where are those companies excellent at bringing on only winners and then exiting losers quickly. And through that process, we identify where they're most likely to have a bunch of ballast, stuff that's holding them back in their business, or things that are basically costing them money.
Hmm.
And then we go through a process to patch those leaks, if you will, in order to improve their profitability. And so essentially what we do is we exit the worst parts across the worst dimensions of those companies. And you are highlighting that profit accelerator program that we offer. And typically for those companies that qualify, we have a money back guarantee that they get another 5 points of net profitability in 90 days. And I'm happy to say often we get way more than that because the value of getting rid of the worst parts of your business is so high. And the good part is while it can take a long time to build up something great, it actually doesn't take a long time to get rid of something crappy.
Well, I was going to say, even if you build something great, I thought you were going to say that, it can equally go away very fast without profits. So,
There's that too, for sure.
but I love that. And then, really looking at saying, hey, what are the proverbial stars in your business? Okay. We got about 5 minutes left, 4.5. What is the question that you wish people ask you more about? That if you were at a party and and hopefully it's related to profit, running business, etc. But what is the thing that just like lights you up about talking about these things, the things that people don't think to consider that, if they could just let you on a pedestal or whatever to talk about it, that's the thing that you really, really care about, that you're really passionate about. And then I'll say for our listeners, Ben has been in business 20 years, has like the scars to prove it. And so really hoping that we can draw from your experience of something that you learned, whether the easy way or the hard way, that you just like are really passionate about sharing for business owners and people within organizations.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to write that down. I wish more people called me out and said I was full of it when I said I'm a specialist at profitability and I have shortcuts, techniques, and secrets to dramatically improve your profitability quickly. And that in 90 days, most companies that are average or below average profitability could get a 5% profitability boost, literally in only 90 days. And that's the program that I was mentioning. Because I think so many people, first of all, they don't believe that there are direct pathways to improving profitability.
Hmm.
And so I think most business owners who are not strong with profitability in their companies, and let's call that the bottom half. So at any size range in any industry, there's a distribution of profitability. There's the top quartile, the top half, the bottom quartile, etc. But I think so many people in the bottom half excuse their low profitability because, hey, I just need to get a little bit bigger. Well, that's not true because there are another, let's say 100 companies exactly your same size in your same SIC code, NAICS classification, blah, 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 that are way more profitable. So what's your reason for not being profitable? Anyway, so a good example would be if you have 5 market segments, 1 or 2 are stars, 2 or 3 are average, and 1 or 2 you're getting killed on. I guarantee you, if you exited the one you're getting killed on, your net profitability would jump like the next day. That's a shortcut. That's not, we're going to grow our way out of this problem. And I think so many people are so focused about using we'll just grow our way out of the problem. Another million in revenue, another 100 million in revenue. We'll, spread these fixed costs over our, or this revenue over our fixed costs and we'll do better. And it's just not true because you're not going to get that next $100 million in revenue for free. You're going to have to sweat your whatever's off to get it. And that's going to have its own costs. So why not be profitable today? I'll leave you guys, if you like, with maybe one of my most powerful tools. We got a minute for that? Okay. We call it the 50-20 rule. And the idea is, first of all, you line up which area of your business is sort of doing most poorly. Let's say poor market segments or poor products or poor staff. And you exit half of the worst 20% in the next 30 days. If you're a much larger company, you might need a little bit of a longer runway. So why the bottom 10%? Why half of the worst 20%? Well, The other half of the worst 20%, you've got a bunch of reasons why you can't exit it so quickly. So let's just take, speaking of basketball or basketball, let's take the layups or the easy buns, right? So if half of that worst 20% is your wife's nephew's uncle, let's take the other half that's easy to exit, right? And in that bottom, if you think of the 80-20 rule, the top 20% is often giving you 80% of the goodness, which means that the bottom 20% is likely responsible for 80% of the waste, the problems, the headaches, and almost never does it have positive ROI. So by cutting from that bottom slice, you can really juice profitability just from a straight financial point of view. And you can put time and energy back in your own gas tank and typically that of your staff as well. So the 50-20 rule is one of the most powerful and simple applications of essentially getting rid of the stuff that's costing you money. So check out our free tool, profitdoctor.com/leaks, LEAKS. It's free. I would love nothing more than for people on this call to download that tool, which is free, use it without our help, get a big return, and just send me a 2-line email and say, thanks, I know we didn't pay you any money, but we really loved using your free tool and we got, an incredible outcome. So I get so excited about helping entrepreneurs and business owners improve their profitability. I think you're going to have to give me the hook because I'm just winding up into, cruising altitude on talking about this stuff, Anthony.
No, I love it. Well, it's a great opportunity to connect. profitdoctor.com/leaks. I think that there's a couple things that I'm taking away from there. So 80-20, the bottom 80% or bottom 20% is causing 80% of your headaches, and the opportunity to deal with that right away so that you don't have to take away from the top stuff. So whether it be proactive or reactive, this is the opportunity to do that, and recognizing you can't do everything. But it's also the systematic look at one's business and what I call, addition by subtraction, to add all of that extra would cost so much versus removing the bad is cheaper to do. And it's supporting the best parts of your business. And so, potentially getting your team together, potentially as an individual looking at that, downloading the tool, seeing what you get from that, having a conversation with Ben and or his team to support you. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. And that's what Profit Doctor is all about. By the way, again, not sponsored podcast. I just think it's really valuable to have folks who've been there, done that, see it, and can understand, the drivers when they're there, and to understand how to take that in. So Ben, thank you so much for being here today. It was a blast. I appreciate you sharing. I will make sure that link is in the show notes, and just congratulations on all the ways that you help people and everything that you do in the world. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Anthony. I was so happy to be here and meet you and talk to you, and love to try to help your audience, connect with me. There's a lot of good content on YouTube and LinkedIn and stuff that we offer, again, for free, because I just love helping people, particularly those folks who've been struggling for years, but feeling like a failure because the financial reward has not been coming through. And often it's just because they're sitting here studying a hockey playbook, but they're not playing hockey. So wish you guys the best of luck. Download some free tools. We'd love to help you guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ben. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Anthony.
Folks, my guest today, Ben Hansen, Profit Doctor. What I really appreciate of Ben's approach is that, he has built and grown these businesses. Fastest growing does not mean most profitable. And so you can't recognize it until you're there. And then so for you as a business owner, for you as a team, reflect and say, hey, are we getting the performance that we want? How are we measuring success? While we might have top line, do we have our bottom line? That's the whole point of business. The other thing I really appreciated from Ben's approach is making sure, hey, are we running the correct playbook? Just because everybody is running this playbook, aka the tech playbook, is it applicable to our business that does insurance, product innovation, plumbing, etc.? Don't judge a fish's intelligence by its ability to climb a tree. One of my favorite quotes. And so are you running someone else's playbook, trying to be someone else, really focusing on your own business? And as an owner, what matters most is your profitability. It'll support you in your burnout, your health, and your impact in the world. So once again, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Be sure to share with your friends. If you wouldn't mind, just post it on social media just to share with some other folks that might be interested in it. We try to offer valuable guests just like Ben every week to help you drive your organization forward and have as much success as you desire. My name is Anthony Taylor. This has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time.